Hey, it's Soul with another video, and it turns out there has been a pretty big development over in the World of Warcraft space with this whole thing about sub-races and the possibility of having these new races come in, and this isn't something that personally I'm like a huge fan of, but apparently a lot of people are, so I'm going to jump on the bandwagon and talk about this for a little bit, so here we go. So credit mostly goes to the good folks at MMO Champion and the 8.0 speculation thread. It's like this huge mega thread, tons and tons of pages of different kinds of theories and, well, in this case, data mining that had occurred on a certain WoW database file that has alluded to the possibility of these new snazzy sub-races. Now, first, let me talk about sub-races in general, because to be honest, I don't like the word. I like to think of it as more like, additional character customization options that might come into the next expansion. In this case, the data mined information includes the Nightborn, Void Elves, Lightforged Draenei, and the High Mountain Tauren. And I guess I'll talk about those first because that gives us the most concrete possible proof of what could be coming. As for the feasibility of these, and again, these aren't like guaranteed or anything, this is all still speculation. We're not going to know until like next Friday or so, after BlizzCon's, after their opening ceremony. The Nightborn I can definitely see. They had a very, very involved campaign, and both the Blood Elves and the Night Elves got all together. They all had a cute little powwow, and it's like, okay, cool. Let's kind of team up and let's start breaking stuff together. Void Elves, though, I don't see where the hell that makes sense, like, at all. I mean, the only instance that we've seen of a Void Elf was Ilaria during the end of that scene at the Triumvirate Cinematic. And even in the 8.0 speculation thread, they kind of question whether or not, just Ilaria becoming a Void Elf, does that mean that she's suddenly going to be like, one of us, and she's going to like suddenly subjugate a whole bunch of Void Elves to join her side? And I guess the other thing would be, well, if she is like, patient zero of this whole Void Elf phenomenon, why is it only Void Elves? How come orcs can't do it? How come gnomes can't do it? Or Tauren, or whatever. On the opposite end, though, Lightforged Draenei I can definitely see. We already have Lightforged Draenei. There are a number of them. We know how they are created. And from that, we know that they are Draenei already. And at least to date, there are no Lightforged anything else except for, of course, Terralion. That does make me question a little bit, well, how come there are no Lightforged humans in that case? But, maybe that's something that can develop over time, or maybe it'll just stick to a Draenei sort of thing. Or even on top of that, the way that the lore might be written is that the Draenei, Lightforged Draenei, there aren't new ones that are being made necessarily. These are just ones that are in this big, expansive army of the light that unfortunately we just don't see in game. Of course, we only see the folks that are on the Zenithar and the Vindikar, and very little else. For all we know, the army of the light might be deployed all over, all over parts of the Great Dark Beyond, fighting the good fight. High Mountain Tauren are pretty easy. They're Tauren, they're from High Mountain. Ta-da! There's not too much, there's not a lot to it, so I can definitely see them as another optional race option. And to be perfectly honest, I could actually see any of these races joining either the Horde or the Alliance. And that's because we've worked with, we players have worked with all of these races on a neutral aspect throughout all of Legion. So I would say, why not? Why should the High Mountain Tauren, forsake the Alliance players that have helped them out? It's like, okay, well, screw you. We're gonna join Team Horde because that's where all the other Tauren are. So yeah, that's what we decided. It does make some sense, but at the same time, like I said, it just kind of takes a dump on the efforts that players have made for the Alliance. And then the same thing would go for the Draenei. Okay, cool. Horde was helping, the Horde was helping you guys out, but you turn your back on us. What's up with that? So again, I'm not very fond of the term sub-races. Like, I think of Draenei, and then I think of Lightforged Draenei, and it's like, why is one considered like a sub-race? So I'm going to continue talking about these as if all of these are just customization options, even if I probably will accidentally say sub-race somewhere throughout this video. But that's kind of the big push that I think Blizzard is making, is that they're pushing for a lot more customization options as opposed to a new race. And I had speculated in an earlier video, I think it was a weekly, where I thought thought, hey, you know, if they are going to make a brand new race, it would be the Ethereals. I think the Ethereals would be a decent fit for a sub-race in the World of Warcraft, especially in the context of what's coming up next, assuming that this is going to be all about the Void. The Ethereals are a kind of race that is already invested into the Void. They're already very intimate with it, given that their world was destroyed by the Void Lords or something to that. This is all off the top of my head, so I apologize if I have some of this lore wrong. And at the same time, the Ethereals have worked with both the Horde and the Alliance, both as a buddy and as something that we should kill in an instance, as we've seen in multiple instances of like Burning Crusade, and even recently in Legion with the seat of the Triumvirate dungeon. So I can definitely see them as a neutral race that can work with either the Horde or Alliance. Given these more recent developments, though, it brings up the drawbacks of creating a brand new race. I mean, you're making a brand new race, so that means you have an entire new model to work with, and you have thousands upon thousands of different weapon and armor models to work with. Now that said, it's not enough of an excuse to say, oh, Blizzard won't do that because it's too hard. Blizzard likes to do things because they make sense, and you know they'll be damned if you know the work that goes into it is a blocker for them. I mean, that's why they did like the stat squishing, because it made sense to do it. You know, there's a certain perception problem. On top of that, you would need a backstory, a possible capital city. You need to have an entire like starting, a racial starting area. You'd have to do the whole shebang and all that. And I would argue that unless the Ethereals or whatever new race that comes in isn't like a hero type where you come out of the starting area at a very high level, not so much like the Pandora or the Goblins or the Worgen where you come out at a pretty low level. You would want to come up pretty high, because to be honest, the leveling in, the early leveling in the World of Warcraft, there just ain't a lot of love there. So I think that having players go through that kind of journey is kind of a pain. And cool, they could always do race change options too, but I don't think that would quite, I don't know if that would quite work either. So that's where I come back to just simple character customization across the board. I think that provides a much bigger value for players, because while there are a lot of players that are like, oh man, I really want to play as an ogre or an ethereal, and I'm a big fan of the ethereal class. I think they look pretty badass. At the same time, I'm very invested into being a blood elf. I like standing up straight. I like the look of them. I just like them. And there are a lot of players that like their races too. So when you think about it, cool, there's a new race, that's a great value, but there are going to be, it's just a matter of you either want that race or you don't. And if you don't want that race, then this means absolutely nothing to you. So, cool, Blizzard will make this grandiose announcement, hey, we got this thing coming, hey, it's really cool, whoop-de-doo, but you don't care. And that kind of sucks. So that's why I'm leaning heavily towards customization options. And there are two ways to go about it. One is that, with regards to like Lightforge Draenei or Void Elves or whatnot, it's just a simple toggle. You can just change it, or you can, you can just pay for like those facial changes, whatever the heck that character service is called, and you can just make yourself look however you like. And then considering each and every race, you can have all those different kinds of customization options. And of course, they're going to expand on it a lot more. I think. Again, I can't stop saying it. There's just a lot of value that comes into, letting your blood elf have like shorter ears, a slightly different size to them, or like longer arms or things like that. And maybe the tech is there to allow like the character models and armor models to kind of stretch out a little bit and provide that sort of different feeling and that sort of different animation style without really having to rework absolutely everything. But I'm not sure. It would be nice, a little convenient, if we can just kind of hit a toggle, pay a couple bucks, yay, Blizzard makes a little bit more money off of us, and then boom, the Draenei can slap that whole Naru glyph on top of their back. Ta-da, I'm Lightforged, let's do this. Or if Alliance Gnomes all of a sudden wanted to make themselves give themselves like the Clockwork model, they can make themselves look like that if they really wanted to. Of course, there's a big break in the lore for that. It's like, okay, all of a sudden my gnome is like metallic, what the heck's up with that? But I mean, that's part of the roleplay aspect, and I think that creating your own story from that, I think there's a bit of value there. It's not like Blizzard has to tell the story each and every time for like every little change that they decide to do. But of course, players are going to want that. So I kind of have an idea of how they could possibly introduce these sorts of character customization options, as in they would have it locked at first, right? you won't have all these things available to you. You won't be able to make your orc brown or gray or red. You won't be able to like access all these customization options right away. Instead, we would have kind of like how we unlocked all these different artifact weapons. We would have these special racial quest lines that allowed these sorts of things to be unlocked. Now, I don't know how I would go about it. This is something that's just kind of coming out of the top of my head. But like, let's say we can play, we could play this as any race. Let's say I'm a blood elf, right? And I decided to play the orc racial quest line. So maybe there is a certain quest line that involves the orcs, and it involves getting these orcs together, like the Mag'har orcs. The Mag'har orcs, like those are the brown ones that are over in Nagrand, over in Outland, and then you do some quests for them, and then once you finish that sort of quest line, ta-da, you unlock those customization options for that race. So cool, you can get the brown skin, and maybe there are other things, like I think like Beliar had said something like tattoos. That was a big thing for him, like having facial tattoos and things like that. And I think that would be a big thing I would want to involve all the races in, is a lot more facial customization options, because that's the most exposed things we've got. I mean, we can do like Demon Hunter tattoos and things like that, but it's not often that we would be able to transmog that stuff and make it available. It's much easier for the face because, ta-da, we just remove the helmets and there we go. Another possible like default example would be the Nightborn in this case. Cool, you want to look like the Nightborn? All you have to do, okay, maybe it's not so simple, but all you have to do is complete the Nightborn campaign over in Legion in Suramar, and when you complete that, ta-da, you can now reskin either your Blood Elf or your Night Elf into the Nightborn if you wanted to, because at least the way I see it, my opinion here, is that the Nightborn should be able to join either race without any trouble. The small drawback that I have there is that not every race is going to have like those kinds of customization options. I mean, Draenei, Nightborn, okay, cool, that's easy. But what about something like humans? I mean, how different can they really get with their customization options? I mean, there are a lot of folks that say, oh, we should have the Vrykrull as a sub race, which and I'm speaking for myself here. I personally don't think that's a very feasible thing. The Vrykrull are traditionally, aligned mostly with themselves more than anything. It's not like they have to be bad guys, but they're more like into themselves than anything else. I don't really see them supporting the good guys, so to speak, unless of course it is at Odin's behest. So there might be something there to support the human populations, but again, we're kind of trading like weird territory, because Odin and the Vrykrull in that case, that was more of a neutral thing, as the class order hall and and all that stuff. It just kind of mucks that up. So I can see some problems with having a lack of customization options when it comes to one race over another, but I think that with enough player feedback, that those things can be added somehow in some way. I know that this is just my idea, but I think that it'd be pretty neat to have these kinds of class quest lines that we can optionally take on in order to, one, unlock these customization options, but two, on top of that, to discover more of the lore of the races that we know, but might not have played and might not have experienced. I mean, you think of way back in the day, back in the Vanilla and Burning Crusade days, where we really got to know our race. We stuck pretty close to our capitals at the very beginning, and we got to know just what are the motivations of our race and what is our role in the world and our role in our faction. Like, for example, the Forsaken was trying to find a cure, establish a foothold. The trolls were just trying to make their home, trying to rebuild their home. Same thing with the gnomes. Orcs are just trying to get by in this new world and this new kingdom, or this new territory with Orgrimmar that they created for themselves. But that's fallen off with this whole greater story that we've been discovering with Deathwing and the Lich King and Sargeras and the Legion and what have you, So there's a lot that we haven't really rediscovered within ourselves, within our races. Being able to, as Blood Elf, jump into the orcish race quest in order to unlock their stuff and forward and advance some of the story there. I think that's something that I can really be on board with. I mean, it's something that everyone can participate in optionally, right? It is kind of like the Artifact or the Order Hall quest lines, where they're specific to certain races, or specific to certain weapons or your class. But at the same time, this gives you a chance to kind of cross cross those lines so that everyone can get in on it. I know that a big critique with the 7.2 patch and in most of Legion actually is that there's certain content that people just didn't get to experience because they only play one class, one spec, one faction. This gives Blizzard the opportunity, and this gives players the opportunity to play everything if they really wanted to. It's just a matter of how they want it. It's really just a matter of how they want to implement it. So to summarize all this rambling that I've been going on with, I am more and more leaning towards there not being a brand new race. I'm leaning heavily to having tons and tons of new customization options for every race, although it's going to be a bit imbalanced as to who gets how much more customization options. And that's mostly because of the kinds of stories that we've been telling over the past couple of years. And just not every race option, not every race will have those expanded options. And to unlock these kinds of customization options, there's going to be race-based quests that will unlock these options, help tell the story as to why some of these things like the High Mountain Torrent, the Lightforged Draenei, the Nightborn, the Brown Orcs, the Metal Gnomes and all that stuff, why that stuff is coming in. And circling back to all this data mined information with the Lightforged Draenei, the Void Elves and Nightborn and what have you, that these will be considered neutral, that both Alliance and Horde will be able to play these kinds of sub-races, or however you want to call them, because the storylines behind all 4 of these instances are neutral. They can go either way, and I think that the races that the personalities behind these sub-races, that they shouldn't choose one or the other. They can be both. So that's me sharing my thoughts about all this stuff. And I know that this space of the sub races and the speculation, it's getting really crowded at this point. So I'm grateful for you listening. God, I'm like super jazzed, and I'm super I'm definitely anticipating what's going to be happening over at the opening ceremony at BlizzCon. I'm going to be at the edge of my seat. For sure. I'm going to be like, oh my God, what's going to happen? So yeah, we'll just have to see. And well, feel free to share your thoughts, like and subscribe if you're enjoying this and want to watch and listen to more, or keep an eye out for all my BlizzCon related content over the next week or so. And yeah, stay breezy, guys.